You're listening to The Foundation of Wellness, a refreshing take on diet and lifestyle, with Jessica Dogert, a registered dietitian nutritionist, and Marisa Moon, a primal health coach.
Hi, you guys. My name is Jessica, and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and you can learn all about me on my website, jessicadogert.com.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Marisa Moon. I'm a certified primal health coach from marisamoon.com and the food blogger from mylongevitykitchen.com.
Okay, so this is episode 30, and it's part 2 of our series on dairy. Last week, Marisa and I chatted all about the benefits, different sources, myths, and more. And today, you'll learn more about dairy intolerances, allergies, and all the ways to help with that. So let's dive into it. I feel like we all love dairy. I mean, think about ice cream and cheese and yogurt, but dairy doesn't seem to love us back. I mean, what is the deal? That's because a lot of us are allergic or intolerant to dairy. And according to the National Library of Medicine, 65% of adults develop some level of lactose intolerance as they age. So we're all born with an enzyme called lactase that allows us to digest our mother's milk during infancy. But lots of us lose that enzyme to some degree as we age.
Yeah, let's think about that for a minute. Our ancient hunter-gatherer ancestors were breastfed until around age 4, let's say. Now they needed lactase, that enzyme that breaks down the milk sugar called lactose. They needed lactase while they were breastfeeding, but after that, the body saw no use in producing the enzyme anymore. But maybe more importantly, we should imagine this time because there wasn't any domestication of cows or milk-producing mammals at this point in history. Circumstances with only wild animals would not allow them to include dairy in their diet, But you better believe that they would consume it throughout their life if they could. And they did, or we did. Humans did as soon as we figured out how to tame wild animals enough to domesticate them. And when humans began raising cows and goats and other herding mammals, natural selection went to work. And about 8,000 years ago, according to Chris Kresser in his book, The Paleo Cure, 8,000 years ago, a genetic mutation occurred, which allowed humans to continue making the lactase enzyme throughout adulthood. And those populations that were still making the enzyme had more robust health and fertility because of this. So that's what we mean by natural selection. Their genetic mutation to maintain lactase production was favored in nature, allowing them to survive more successfully than those populations without the genetic mutation, because they had access to the unique life-giving nutrients that's found in dairy, while these other populations did not. And now a third of the world's population produces lactase into adulthood. And that figure gets closer to 100% in some parts of Northern Europe. So this is known as lactase persistence. Knowing this helps us to finally see why the world is split into two camps. People who believe dairy can be healthy and people who believe it's not. Some people can digest it and access its nutrients, and some people cannot.
Okay, so what we're talking about here is a tolerance or intolerance for lactose, the sugar in dairy. So if you guzzled milk as a kid but now notice bloating or GI distress or even acne or random symptoms you just can't figure out, maybe it's time to get tested for a lactose intolerance. So there isn't really a golden standard test for dairy allergies or sensitivities. So it's really up to you if that's the route you want to take. But Marisa and I both seem to agree that just removing the dairy food group from your diet for a short period of time, it can actually help you figure out pretty quickly and without the confusion of misleading lab test results. And the cool thing is that if you're reacting to lactose, you will likely still be able to enjoy dairy products low in lactose, such as ghee and butter and yogurt and kefir and hard cheeses and possibly even cream. It's all about the percentage of lactose in dairy you're consuming and your personal threshold for it.
And you'll notice now that there are so many dairy products out there with added lactase on the ingredient list or in the processing. You ever see lactose-free milk? Even Organic Valley makes a lactose-free milk and cream that they process with lactase because that enzyme digests the lactose in advance, leaving you with a lactose-free product. So besides those alternatives, there's supplements you can take that provide the digestive enzymes, specifically lactase here, so that you can enjoy some of your favorite foods without all of the repercussions. And it's not a permanent solution to use digestive enzymes, but it does make for a great supplemental tool. I've tried it too. And another cool thing is that lactose intolerance is not typically dangerous for us. It's bothersome, yeah, quite embarrassing even, but it hardly disrupts the body's overall health compared to most other food sensitivities. That is a surprise to a lot of people, but it's true. Lactose intolerance is only as serious as it affects your discomfort physically or psychologically. And for some people, I know that can be serious, but for others, it's just a mild nuisance.
And all of this being said, if you find yourself reacting to dairy foods that are under 2% lactose, it's likely you are sensitive to milk proteins. And that means that cow's dairy or even all dairy should probably be avoided, with a few possible exceptions like ghee or goat or sheep milk products, really just depending on the individual. So while milk proteins are very well absorbed by most people, they can cause serious issues in a minority of the population. So studies suggest that somewhere between 1 in 200 and 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 adults are allergic to milk protein, which include casein, whey, and bovine serum albumin, among several others.
Now, it's also likely that an even larger number of people suffer from an intolerance to milk proteins. An intolerance is different than a true allergy, right, Jess?
Right.
The body in an intolerance is not producing antibodies to the milk protein, but it can still cause some serious symptoms.
And true milk and dairy allergies, of course, are serious, causing symptoms from hives to vomiting to anaphylactic shock. And for all of you new parents out there, milk protein is one of the most common allergens for babies and young children, affecting 2 to 3% of them. And most children do outgrow this, but if your baby or child is having symptoms such as diarrhea or constipation or skin breakouts or abdominal pain or insomnia or even irritability, you should probably ask your pediatrician about removing dairy entirely for 30 days to see if that will help.
I can just imagine that helping quite a bit of parents, so I hope the word gets out. That was a good tip. Now, it was maybe 5 years ago that I completely cut dairy from my diet. A lot of us have to eliminate dairy because of a casein or lactose intolerance. Now remember, casein is the protein and lactose is the sugar. Or some people have to eliminate it because we've discovered we have a gluten sensitivity. That was the case for me. Now, unlucky for this group of us, there's this process called molecular mimicry where your body mistakes the casein molecule in dairy for the gluten molecule. And it causes the same negative reaction regardless of which food group you're consuming. So I was getting some of my gluten sensitivity symptoms when I was consuming dairy. And this is common. So I tried dairy-free living for 6 months, and I only made some exceptions here and there, like butter and goat cheese and sheep cheese, usually only from raw milk. So these were unpasteurized goat and sheep cheeses. And I explained in our previous episode, number 29, that goat and sheep dairy have a different type of casein protein compared to the cow's dairy that we consume today. So that's why there's a difference there, and I made that exception. Now, right away, after removing the dairy, I saw results, you guys. Hardly any gas anymore, or the GI symptoms I was living with. And at this point in my journey, I assumed that I was going to have to give up cow's dairy forever. But to my surprise, I'm one of the lucky few that can tolerate it once again. I don't even know if it's just a few of us. In fact, I think it's pretty common that if you have a gluten sensitivity, you'll have to remove it the dairy from your diet just while you're healing. So after making some dietary adjustments, healing your leaky gut, you can reintroduce dairy and you may not have a sensitivity after all. I don't seem to have a single issue with dairy anymore. Once I eliminated the gluten from my diet for long enough and I healed my leaky gut, my body stopped reacting negatively to the casein protein in dairy. Now, I do wonder sometimes if dairy is the reason I have to clear my throat daily, or that I experience like these weekly episodes of postnasal drip. Both dairy and eggs are commonly to blame for these types of symptoms. In holistic medicine and in Ayurveda, they consider both dairy and eggs to be mucus-forming foods. So if you're fighting something, like a cold, you're going to want to cut them out until your body has totally cleared it. Or if you're constantly clearing your throat all day, I totally notice it when people do that now because I know this. But you might want to consider cutting out dairy or eggs, maybe one at a time, just to make your life a little easier. And, take some of the tips that we have at the end of this, because dairy and eggs are hiding in a lot of foods. But that could help clear things up. You do have to be willing to go through these experiments to figure it out, though. I mean, it's totally worth it. Just like anyone else trying this. I hesitated, you guys. I hesitated over and over. I did not want to do it. I was even in culinary school at the time that I tried cutting out dairy. Holy cow, that is not fun. You already are gluten-free during culinary school, and then you're trying to cut out dairy. People sure look at you like you got issues, but I was pretty determined to just get to the bottom of things once and for all. I wanted to figure out exactly how to feel better. And maybe I'll do it again one day for longer than a week, because I haven't done it for longer than a week, really since years ago when I healed my gut. The last time I did it, Jess, was with you. We were doing a high vibe cleanse. That was probably the longest I've gone dairy-free since I really healed my gut. But I'm happy and feeling good the way things are right now, so maybe I'll try it again soon, but I'm good.
Honestly, I love how you said that you just have to be willing to go through these experiments, like just to figure it all out. It's like, it's comforting to know that, okay, I'm going to eliminate dairy for 30 days, but I'm going to reintroduce it to see if I can deal with it. Whereas, if you don't even allow yourself to experiment to see if that's a trouble food for you, you're never going to be able to solve the issues that you're experiencing. I've personally had clients go dairy-free for a variety of reasons. I mean, some tested positive for a dairy allergy, or some struggled with symptoms such as lactose intolerance. Others experienced signs of a dairy sensitivity, like bloating, fatigue, and frequent sinus infections. Still others just wanted to test whether eliminating dairy would improve inflammatory skin conditions such as acne.
Jess, can you tell us, a little bit about what it was like when your clients would give it up, or any experiences you remember about those symptoms going away?
So to be honest, when I would ask them, would you consider giving up dairy for 30 days, or would you consider giving up gluten even for 30 days? Their initial reaction is honestly going to be like, no way, there's no way I could do that. I enjoy it so much. But I think kind of like what you and I are going to talk about later on throughout the episode is just that there are so many great dairy alternatives that won't really make you miss dairy. But I think the hardest part for my clients is just realizing that, going 30 days without it, they think it's going to be so difficult, but it's actually a lot easier than they think. And, once they eliminate symptoms like bloating or gas, or even if like their rosacea is no longer, it's a lot easier to stay off the dairy track when it's actually working for them. But I think they have that misinterpretation of, oh, it's not the dairy. That's not what it is, because we love dairy so much, right?
Yeah, and you'll notice the relief of your symptoms so quickly, usually like within the first few days, that would be encouraging to keep going, right?
Oh, totally. And I mean, people who do suffer from things like asthma and headaches and fatigue and digestive problems, they're often going to experience complete improvements in their health after cutting milk from their diets. I mean, one study removed dairy from the diets of 48 people suffering from either migraines or asthma, and 33 of them reported that their condition improved significantly. So, I mean, say for example, you have asthma or difficulty breathing. I mean, do you carry an inhaler or trouble breathing after a meal? There are over 25 million Americans who suffer from asthma, and according to top functional medicine doctor Mark Hyman, dairy is one of the most common causes of asthma, so maybe it's time to try an elimination diet. More on that soon. Or say, for example, you just can't seem to lose weight. When you're eating trigger foods, you become inflamed, and inflammation causes you to hold on to weight no matter how healthy you think that you're eating or how much you're strength training. And again, maybe it's time to try an elimination diet. So ditching the dairy might allow your body to find its natural, most balanced state. I think that elimination diets are just a great way to see if you're sensitive to dairy. That's what Marisa did to find out if, she would feel better without dairy. And elimination diets, they are an advanced nutrition strategy for people who suspect that they might have a food intolerance and just want to feel better. And we talked a lot about them in episodes 10 and 11. So the Whole30 is a popular elimination diet and might just be the reset button that your body needs. So for 30 days, you only eat real food and you get rid of the most common food allergens like dairy. And if you look at the Big 10 list of food allergens, dairy actually tops the charts, meaning that it falls into the category of foods that cause 90% of all allergic reactions. So this is likely why dairy is on the do not eat list of many elimination diets like Whole30. But the great thing is, after 30 days are up, you can slowly reintroduce dairy back into your lifestyle to see if it was indeed a trigger food or not.
Yeah, a couple things came to mind while you were explaining that because, well, first, dairy doesn't, cause 90% of allergic reactions, but I think what you were explaining to us is that it's in that category of foods, the top 8 or top 10 food allergens that together cause 90% of allergic responses. So when you eliminate those 8 foods, usually your symptoms are going to disappear. But it's really smart to start with something like dairy. If you already know you don't have an allergy to nuts, dairy and gluten and soy are just such great places to start. And that's why we talked about a lot of that in episodes 10 and 11, because so many people's lives change immediately. Heck, there's a lot of people that can just get rid of it for 1 or 2 weeks. If it scares you to do something for 30 days, try one of the food groups for a week just to root yourself on, subside some of your symptoms, and to start discovering what this is really like. People like doing the Whole30 because it's all in one shot. You don't have to do it again if you don't want to. But then again, people get hooked on Whole30 and they do it at least once a year, don't they?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And even in the Whole30 instructions or directions or something like that, it even says this is not hard. These rules are not hard to follow. Having cancer is difficult. It's we all have this mindset of oh my gosh, eliminating foods like dairy and soy and gluten, it's going to be so difficult to do. But really, it's all a mind game. So I feel like your mind is playing tricks on you and you can do this if you want to.
So true. But that's why it helps to really work with someone. Even when I was going through my food sensitivities, I had a really flexible schedule. I was reading all day, reading books, listening to podcasts, learning so much about it. And eventually, after I healed my leaky gut, I ended up going to a functional medicine doctor, and she sent me to a nutritionist. And I was slowly working my way through a low FODMAP diet. Again, something we talked about in episodes 10 and 11, because it's not easy doing this by yourself. You're going to hear some of the details I'm about to get into about food reintroduction. And if you've really looked into the directions for the Whole30, you'll see food reintroduction is no joke. And Jessica and I both agree. This is something that you could really use help with to do it right, so you don't waste your time or have to go through this all over again.
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
If you ask any elimination diet specialist or functional medicine doctor, they're going to tell you the same thing. You only want to reintroduce one food at a time, not an entire food group like dairy, just one food from that group every maybe 2 days or 2 to 3 days. This gives time for you to make the connection between your food reactions or your symptoms because sometimes they're delayed. Sometimes they're delayed up to 24 hours or 48 hours. So you're not getting an immediate reaction like a true allergy. Intolerances and sensitivities can take a while, and sometimes it depends if you meet the threshold or not to trigger them.
I was just going to say, do you remember when you and I taught that one group to High Vibe in regards to just the autoimmune protocol and reintroducing foods?
Yes.
I remember learning about it before we gave that seminar, and it was so crazy to me how, sure, I can eat something with dairy in it for dinner, but really not feel a response until maybe that next morning or that afternoon, day after. So it really is incredible to think that just because you eat a food and you don't have a headache or you don't have bloating happening within, the first hour of eating the food doesn't mean that you won't experience those symptoms tomorrow. So it's so important to just be aware of your body.
Yes, exactly. And then in the case of dairy, this would mean that when you start reintroducing, you would just choose one type of dairy to try. So, you're not starting with butter and cheese in your omelet and also having cereal for a snack with milk. I mean, that's just way, way, way too much, and you could totally regret it. And you don't know which one was really the trigger. So it may seem overly cautious at first, but it's totally worth it. So you can learn it all now, and then you don't have to start over with the entire diet. And you're going to find that you react to some foods and not the others in the same food group. You might even find that you tolerate one food sometimes and not other times. That's because of our stress levels, lack of sleep, even just the way our immune system is in that moment. If you're fighting something, it can affect the way that your reaction to a trigger food is going to be. And if you're underslept, for instance, you might have an overreactive response. So don't try reintroducing foods if you're sick and you're underslept and you're totally stressed out, because you're not really getting a clear read on that. Now, there's a specific order that we suggested to those cleansers, Jessica, in the AIP protocol, but we also would tell anyone when you're reintroducing dairy, you got to be careful. There's a specific order that you'd benefit from reintroducing because it's based on how you're likely to react from them. You want to start with the one that you're less likely to react from and work your way up. So most people with a lactose intolerance can handle dairy products with under 2% lactose, in a reasonable quantity. You're not going to eat like an entire stick of butter, So say you're starting with ghee or butter or kefir or hard cheeses, and even sometimes yogurt if they've been fermented for 24 hours or more. These are foods that can have under 2% lactose. Now, if you're still reacting to even one of those, then you probably are having to worry about the proteins in dairy, like we talked about, casein, for instance, not the lactose. Some people who can't consume cow dairy products are still going to be able to consume goat and sheep dairy products like we mentioned because of those different proteins. And I know it's confusing, you guys. There's a lot more to it, Fluid milk, for instance, is not well tolerated by most people, so I don't ever recommend it. Mm-hmm. Now, the exception would be raw milk, which is often well tolerated even by those who can't drink pasteurized milk. You can learn more about the specific order of reintroducing dairy by just reading The Paleo Cure by Chris Kresser, or by working with a health coach like me or with Jessica. I can be reached at marisa@marisamoon.com. That's Marisa with one S, like Marissa. And Jess, what's your email?
And my email is Jess, Jess, Dogert, Dogert @gmail.com. So you should definitely reach out to either Marisa or I if you are interested in eliminating food groups like dairy, because we would love to help you. And I think it's really important, after everything that Marisa has said in terms of reintroduction, that quality does matter. I mean, you want to choose organic, you want to choose cultured, you want to choose grass-fed, and you want to choose full fat. And if you notice symptoms coming back like brain fog, fatigue, headaches, bloating, it's likely a sign that you're sensitive to dairy. And if you do find that you're sensitive during the reintroduction phase of an elimination diet and decide to cut it out for good, there are some things that you should know about how to do it right. And here are some tips. One tip is that you want to be aware of just hidden dairy sources. So dairy lurks in many foods as an additive or ingredient. For example, whey or casein protein is often added to energy bars. Milk-derived ingredients can also be found in powdered guacamole mix, flavored potato chips, crackers, salad dressing, soup, cereal, cookies, and even frozen dinners. And skim milk powder is an ingredient in much-loved Nutella. So to completely avoid dairy, reading every ingredient on a label is key. By the way, if you are looking for a dairy-free Nutella replacement, you can try Justin's chocolate hazelnut butter or the to die for gem chocolate hazelnut butter. So Marisa and I fell in love with that when we used to work at High Vibe together.
Obsessed. That's the best stuff ever.
It's addicting, so you just have to be careful not to eat the whole jar in one setting. And when you do see cocoa butter on the label, just know that's not dairy. It's the fat derived from cocoa beans. And another tip to eliminate dairy is just experiment with dairy-free alternatives. So in addition to dairy-free milk and yogurt, you can find non-dairy options in nearly every section of the grocery store these days. So from ice creams made with coconut milk, to cheesy dips made of cashews and ricotta made out of almonds. So while they may not be the most perfect health foods, so coconut milk ice cream is still ice cream, you guys, I feel like these products can actually help you just stay on a dairy-free track. And they could be key for just ensuring that problematic symptoms like bloating and gas just doesn't return if you do suffer from an allergy or sensitivity. And all that being said, it really is important to make whole foods your foundation, so including plenty of vegetables and lean proteins and healthy fats and just nutrient-dense starchy veggies. And you want to think of things like dairy-free ice cream as a treat and cashew cheese as just a condiment to eating more vegetables.
Yeah, and I don't even think I really emphasized yet that one reason you shouldn't fear going dairy-free or having a dairy sensitivity is because you might be like me in that you can have it again one day. A lot of us have so much to repair in our GI tract, and it can be quick, like just a matter of weeks, like 3 weeks and you're ready to go, or it can take like a year to undo the damage and rebalance your gut microbiome. And there's just a lot to learn there and patience to be had and just to believe in the power of your amazing body, because we really are at default healthy people, and it can take some work to get there, but getting rid of dairy now is not a life sentence for a lot of people.
I love how you said that. I mean, it's so true how, once we heal our gut, we can possibly incorporate it back into our lifestyle. I mean, it's amazing, like what you said, what the body can do when you do eliminate foods for a while. And once you fully heal, like dairy could actually be okay for you to be eating on a regular basis. So there's hope, you guys.
Yeah. And a lot of people that have to remove dairy end up considering raw milk. You may want to consider raw milk if you miss having milk in your lives. Raw milk is unpasteurized milk, and the Weston A. Price Foundation has been campaigning for real milk, also known as raw milk, since before the year of 2000, when back then only 27 states in the U.S. allowed the sale of unpasteurized milk. But now, 18 years later, there are 43 states allowing raw milk to be sold to consumers. More and more people in the paleo world or everywhere are searching for raw milk to use instead of baby formula, for instance, or to replace the highly processed milk that we find in our grocery stores. But why? Why are people trying to get their hands on raw milk? Well, because it's absolutely nutritious, and more importantly, because it retains the enzymes that are otherwise broken down during pasteurization. And these enzymes ease digestion. That's what's missing. That's why so many of us have trouble digesting milk today. And there are so many countries that just consume raw milk. I mean, pasteurization helped us to keep our food supply clean and make sure that people weren't getting sick from certain pathogens that were in milk. But there is a middle line, and there is some way for you to find safety in consuming raw milk. In fact, many of the professionals studying this field are noticing that other food groups are far more dangerous, such as chicken and raw vegetables, for food outbreaks. And that's fascinating because you would think that without pasteurization, we couldn't consume the milk, but that's not true. And many people who are intolerant to lactose can comfortably drink raw unpasteurized milk. That's a big deal. I mean, I've tried raw milk from a local farm and also from my neighbor's goat. I even milked it once myself. But it's incredible tasting, you guys. It really tastes so much better. And if I was retired and I was diligent enough, I would get a goat just for that fresh milk because nothing beats it.
I have never tried fresh raw milk, and I really want to. I mean, does it taste different?
Well, I can't really tell you the last time I drank pasteurized whole milk to compare it to. But when I bought it from a farmer's market, from a local farm in Chicago, I had to go pick it up, which, by the way, you'll find it's often labeled as pet food because those are like the loopholes in the law. So this was sold for your pets.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I purchased it and wanted to make homemade yogurt from raw milk. And I don't really drink milk, but I, of course, wanted to try it. So I tried this whole milk, and it was just so creamy because it's non-homogenized, you guys. And homogenization is this process where they, force milk through a sieve that makes the fat globules like all emulsified in the milk so that they're like suspended and the fat doesn't rise to the top, because in the old days the cream rose to the top and you had like this creamy film at the top of your milk, and they just assume that customers don't like that and they want it all emulsified, so now they homogenize it, which changes the protein structure. And a lot of anti-dairy advocates or anti-pasteurization advocates say that this homogenization encourages more sensitivities and inflammation in the GI tract. So it's a good thing if you can find milk that's non-homogenized, and you can even find that in the grocery store, which is why I buy the heavy cream from Kelowna Supernatural. Kelowna sells organic, grass-fed, non-homogenized, small batch pasteurized milk. So it's the best that I could find. And we love heavy cream. Eric, my husband, puts heavy cream in his coffee every day. And, we even pour it over our ice cream when we want to make it less sweet. It's something I learned when I was a kid, and I love doing that. Yeah. And I just feel better knowing it's from a farm that really cares about the quality. But when you buy raw milk, it's non-homogenized, non-pasteurized, and it's incredible, the flavor. And a lot of people feel it helps them with things like eczema, or fussy kids that have a lot of food sensitivities can tolerate it. And that's a big deal.
And even kind of like, I think I mentioned earlier, just quality matters. It's like quality doesn't only matter for health reasons. I mean, it really matters for taste. And it seems like you could just really taste the difference from, fresh milk to homogenized milk, which is so incredible. So I kind of want to talk about just the importance of listening to your body. Whenever you do make a dietary change, it's really important to pay attention to your body's response. And ideally, you should feel better, more energetic, free from problematic symptoms like bloating and brain fog and fatigue. And just you want to feel in balance. And if you don't feel better, or you even feel worse, that means that something is off. For example, I've actually seen people remove dairy and not make up for perhaps the missing protein and fat, and just begin to feel hungrier and more run down. But on the flip side, I've actually seen people replace dairy by adding more nuts, extra virgin olive oil, dark leafy greens, and fish, and feel amazing, while also eliminating symptoms like skin irritation and digestive discomfort. So if something is off, your body will likely cue you, so it's really important to tune in and take note. And I think the big takeaway here is, Marisa and I both agreed that dairy is delicious, and it can certainly provide us with so many healthful compounds like CLAs and fatty acid butyrate, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to remember, dairy is not the place that you want to bargain shop or save money either. You don't want powdered coffee creamer. That's one of the worst things on the planet for your health. We're talking about trans fats and heart attacks, people. No more powdered coffee creamer or powdered milk. And I want you looking for high quality dairy from a farm you can learn about. Ask questions. See if you should look into raw milk. See if it interests you, or at least raw milk cheeses, which you can get in the gourmet cheese section at any grocery store today. That's right. I gave a bunch of examples of raw milk cheeses last week. But when you're looking at Gruyere, for instance, or you're looking at Parmigiano Reggiano, or even Pecorino Romano, those are all easy to find and made from raw milk. So they still have those enzymes that make such a nourishing food. And I want you at least buying organic dairy and from cows raised outdoors on the pasture. You'll see a lot of milk and heavy cream cartons and butter cartons now that will say pasture raised. And you would even ideally be looking for something that says the cows are grass fed. We talk a lot about why that's important in the last episode, number 29. Just remember that dairy is a luxury, you guys. You should fork over a few more dollars in your food budget to get the kind that's actually good for you, the kind that's actually good for your family.
Yes, and if you think you're sensitive to dairy, consider an elimination diet to just figure out if it's causing the symptoms you may be experiencing, like fatigue and brain fog and bloating. And if you are sensitive and do decide to give up dairy, don't fret. There are so many delicious dairy-free alternatives. Coconut milk ice cream, cashew cheese sauce, almond cream cheese, yum. Experimentation is key here. One brand might make dairy-free cream cheese that makes your mouth cringe, and another brand might make one that could fool anyone into thinking it's the real thing.
Yeah, and grocery stores will take back the food that you buy and you don't like, especially those expensive vegan or dairy-free alternatives. Get your money back if you really won't eat it, or trade it in at the grocery store for a new one. Tell them that you're looking for something that's actually good. They understand and they will take it back.
Yes, I love that. That's a really good tip. So, do you guys think you're sensitive to dairy? Leave a comment on our Facebook page, the Foundation of Wellness Podcast, because we would love to know.
Yes, we love hearing from you. Leave us a review if you're listening on iTunes. And by the way, if you're listening on iTunes, those commercials in the beginning are not in our control. I've heard a couple of them and I'm like, wait, this is so weird. When you go to play our podcast, you have to listen to some Home Depot commercial or something.
We wish we could put together our own commercial for you guys, but maybe.
Yeah, one day we'll have a sponsor, I'm sure. It's so fun doing this. We love it and we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So please let us know if you love it and share our podcast with a friend.
We appreciate your support. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
That was good.
Yeah, it was good.